That's Heart Dream. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Well, we are in our third week of a series on A Course in Miracles, lessons from A Course in Miracles. Certainly are taking on an ambitious project, aren't we? 1,200 pages, 500,000 words. We're going to cover it in 4 weeks because we're advanced students. That's who we are, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. This is my second book. I tattered and tore about the first one, probably from a few times throwing it across the room. Jesus said, the truth will set you free, but what didn't get in the gospel was first it'll tick you off. Sometimes we're just not ready for that much honesty and truthfulness that the truth provides, especially when it oftentimes holds a mirror up to our experience and shows us where the problem may be. And so if you're uncomfortable with that sort of a message, ushers will show you to the hospitality table early today. Everyone's going to go for that, right? Yeah, as I was preparing for this lesson, and I was thinking, I always sort of feel like there needs to be a bit of a disclaimer when I give this talk, because there is a risk when you talk about this topic of forgiveness that somebody will feel that you've glossed over an important element of their experience in which they feel discounted in some sense. And of course, that's not my intention to do that. What I want to do in today's message is to lay out the spiritual principles that underlie what we see as forgiveness, and particularly how A Course in Miracles teaches forgiveness, because it actually invites us into a path of freedom. And, you know, we're not always ready to hear the high teachings sometimes, and that's absolutely okay. But it's not to see that these high teachings may not be, at some point, part of our path. And it's important as a spiritual teacher to, I think, to give you what could be the complete path from suffering to freedom. I believe that these teachings provide that. They have, for me, not that I don't, of course, get tripped up by my own resentments and by things that I can still get stuck in. But I do know that when I apply this particular practice, the way it's taught, that I find myself on the other side of some really immense suffering and feel the freedom. I feel the love again. I feel the peace that passes all human understanding. And so I offer this to you with that caveat that it certainly may not address all of the new innuendos and the nuances of your particular experience. But it does offer the spiritual teachings, which I believe are absolutely valid. But you won't know that, of course, unless you apply them in your own life. So, I don't know, that's a bit of a disclaimer there. So A Course in Miracles, just briefly to review, it has been called a modern-day interpretation of the teachings of Jesus. It's 1,200 pages long, and it has 3 different sections in it. The first part, about 600 pages, is the text, which provides the theoretical framework upon which the Course is built. Then there's 365 workbook lessons where you actually get to apply the principles that are in the text. And of course, you can do that on a daily basis, and it would take a year to get through those lessons. And then the last section is the Manual of Teachers, which actually is a sort of a clarification of the terms that are in the Course. So that's what it says. What the Course says, and this is foundational to today's message in a nutshell, is only love is real. Name of one of your CDs. Only love is real. Now, from our human experience, that's a big pill to swallow, yes? Of course, it even goes further than saying that. It says anything unlike love does not in truth actually exist. And therein lies the peace of God. So it begins with this very lofty notion that love is the only reality, and that if we're experiencing anything unlike love, it may be our human experience, and maybe there may be truth to it at the level of our experience, but it's not the reality in which we believe that we truly are living in the truth of our being, our spiritual reality. And so, the challenge for you and I is to move from this experience of lovelessness, which happens every day and many moments throughout the day, into how do we find our way back to this awareness of love as being our reality. And that's not an easy thing to do. The Course also says that it's not for us to really understand love. How many people have spent their whole life through multiple relationships trying to figure out this thing called love? Because that is the human level of love. We think if we could really understand it, it's kind of like, if I could get the owner's manual on love, then all my relationships would be great, right? But A Course in Miracles says the kind of love we're talking about here is not something to be understood, because that which is all-encompassing, it's the only reality, right? That which is all-encompassing cannot be understood with the mind. Because the mind compartmentalizes things, and the mind wants to analyze things and wants to compare this to that. And that which is all-encompassing, that which is like the infinite reality of our being, cannot be understood in the way the mind likes to understand it. So if we're working at the level of our mind with our relationships, for example, we are probably going to end up just increasing our suffering. Can anyone relate to that? How many sleepless nights have you and I had trying to figure out a relationship dynamic, a relationship challenge that we have had? And the Course would say, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time trying to figure out, because what is already the reality does not need to be understood. It only needs to be what? Experienced. So we're going to bypass understanding. Whew. Isn't that let off? Doesn't that add more hours to your day and years to your life? We don't have to understand love. Isn't that the best news ever? I don't have to understand this. My work, if you want to call it work, is to return back to this realization of what I was created to experience. The Course takes quite literally the idea that we are created in the image and likeness of God, and God is love. All of the great spiritual traditions teach that God is love. And the Course says there is no dualism in that. There isn't a God that loves some and doesn't love others, or there's no such thing as even the opposite of love. Like the thing that we think love would be opposite of would be fear or hate. And all of those notions, according to A Course, are made up. This is us returning the favor to the divine. God created us in His image and likeness. Now we're going to create you and your version of love in our image and likeness, right? Which is dualistic, which, I will love you if you love me the way I want you to love me. If you treat me a certain way, then I'll love you. And we grew up with that. We understood this sort of, tit-for-tat, transactional sort of notion of love, yes? And that is one version of love, but it's not the reality of love. How do you even grok this notion that love has no opposites, right? Because in our human experience, most of the time, we know what love feels like, and we know what the absence of love feels like. And so we're very much familiar with what seems to be love and no love, love and the absence of love. But A Course in Miracles would say it's not possible for there to be the absence of love any more than there'd be the possibility to have the absence of energy in the universe. It's everywhere present in its fullness, including right where love is as you and me. So that's a big pill to swallow. So let me read a few things to you here. So this is ultimate reality with no opposite, which I essentially said. Love is a given. Love is an isness. It's an isness. It's not something like comes in and goes out. And sometimes we think of the divine that way. Where's God in this situation? As if, God would be swung in like a Greek tragedy from the wings. Here comes God to save the day, to save someone from some desperate situation. Here comes God, we're bringing God in. But this notion of God is so separate, such a separate notion. It's like that God is somehow apart from what you are and what life is and what reality is. And that's not what we believe. We believe that the divine is everywhere present. We believe in omnipotence and omniscience and omni-everything. We're omni-believers. We have omni in front of everything. It's just, you might be a vegetarian, but we have an omnipresent God. So, it's unconditional. It never falters. There's no withholding. How many people may have grown up with a notion that it's conditional, right? You know? Where does that come from? It comes from the way we experience it in our life, right? It's a love that leaves nobody out. It includes, inclusive. A love that heals everything that ails us. Everything. It's not the garden variety of love based upon infatuation or transactional. You know, as I said, if I do what you want, you'll love me back. It's unconditional, never falters. There's no dependency. We may or may not have experienced the manifestation of this kind of love in a relationship with another human being, but we can cultivate an awareness of love's presence. This is the good news. Even if we think we've never experienced this kind of unconditional love in a relationship, does not deprive us of the opportunity, the right, and the absolute possibility and destiny, in fact, that we can experience this kind of love. Because it's not being withheld. We are so convinced. I mean, let's be honest. Can we be honest for a minute? I know this is true. That if I had the most loving experience in my life, what do we normally think of it would depend on? Others. Only one person said it, but don't you all think that? That if I'm going to have this amazing, loving experience, it's going to be someone else in the room, right? Don't you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and that's every version of love. I'm not just talking about romantic love. I'm talking about every form of love. Whether it's, with family members. Oh, yes, we have different versions of relationships there, don't we? But it's always sort of this notion that it's depending upon what someone else can give us. And so what do? We take this very pure notion of love, which is that it's already what we are, and somehow then we just reduce it down, like some French sauce or something. We just keep boiling it down until it becomes this very, really sort of former version of itself, not even a realistic resemblance to what it started to be, which was completely omni, and now it's very personal. It's you. You have got to be my God. You have got to take care of everything that's missing in me. Oh my God. OMG. What a task we put on each other. And what a task that we put on ourselves, right? How many people have showed up in relationships and said, I'm going to try to love you unconditionally. And the other person's like, yes, you will. Yes, and that's exactly what I'm saying yes to. And if you don't, we're going to have a conversation, aren't we? Yes. And so isn't this just an insane thing we do? It's insanity. It's like we're just creating this lose-lose situation. It's a seek but never shall I find theory, right? Because how could you ever have a relationship in which the other person has to become this thing that you're not even clear about? I mean, unless you really know yourself as love itself, you're not clear about what love would look like in a relationship, yes? So here you are hammering away at a relationship with this notion that people have to do certain things. And really what we're asking them to do is don't push my freaking buttons, right? Because I'm really clear about what I don't like. And then if you push my buttons, then I'm going to have to deal with something inside of me. And really, that's not what a good relationship is about, is it? It's about us really just, not really getting under each other's skin at all and just sort of loving the surface, making sure our hair and our makeup and everything else is just great. And we're always putting on a happy face for each other, and we're always showing our best behavior, because that's really what a great relationship is, right? I mean, that's the one that you dreamed about when you fantasized about the perfect relationship, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. Okay. So looking for love in all the wrong places and all the wrong faces. We know that song. We've sung it. We've danced to it. We're tired of it. We're ready to move on, right? Right. Okay. So getting back, that's all egoic. That's all human love. It has nothing to do with God's love. This is love as a dimension of our being. A dimension of our being. And being doesn't even have anything to do with your body. Forget the body. Beingness has nothing to do with the body. It's so essential to who you are that the body is secondary. Now, you may enjoy relationships being in the body, but that isn't the love that we're talking about. God is love. We're created in the image and likeness. If love is what we are being, we don't have to go looking for it, right? We don't have to go look for it. But so how do we do relationships? You really want to get down to it, don't you? That's why you came. That's why you brought your friends today. Your so-called friends. Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, we've done this all wrong, and I've done it all wrong, of course, too, and I've been married for 37 years, and I still get tripped up by this notion. So we all come by this honestly, but there is a path, and that's what A Course in Miracles says. So, what do? We think that the obstacle to love in relationship is other people. I mean, we've acknowledged that there's somebody, that if I'm not experiencing love right now, we never blame God, right? God always gets off the hook, which is appropriate. But other people, they are it. So here's the deal. So what is the apparent obstacle to other people, to love? It's other people. Now the Course has an answer for this, which they call forgiveness. Now, the way we traditionally think of forgiveness is not at all the way A Course understands forgiveness. So this is where you have to pay attention. Because if you just think of forgiveness, you may think of this, but this ain't it. Typical idea is this. This person did something wrong, but I, being the bigger person, I will overlook their guilt. And I will forgive them. I will let them off the hook. That's the normal garden variety kind of forgiveness. We're all familiar with that. The problem is this, that whenever we judge another person, we are not really dealing with the cause of our pain. Because even though we are so sure that the cause of our pain is what they did. He did this to me, she did this to me, and that's the way I feel hurt, and that's why I'm experiencing this pain. So she's guilty, but I'm going to let her off the hook, right? But the metaphysics of A Course in Miracles turns this whole thing upside down and inside out. You're not going to like this part, unless you want to be free. Whatever you see in another person that has you judging them is a mirror. Oh no. Is a mirror to something in yourself that you judge. Ooh, ooh. It's getting quieter and quieter and quieter in here. Fans are coming out. Oh my God, why did I come today? Didn't want to hear this. Whatever you see in another person that has you judging them is a mirror to something in yourself that you judge. Now, you could probably argue with that. And this is where I don't mean to be insensitive or dispassionate with you about circumstances and conditions. But let's just take something relatively mild. Let's say you're driving down the road and someone pulls out in front of you or cuts you off, does something which we would call poor etiquette on the highway. and you have a experience of anger or frustration with them. Course in Miracles would say, if you're judging them, then it's a mirror unto yourself, something that you judge in yourself. Now, you may say, no, I do not drive like that, so that cannot be true. I do not. I am very courteous. I let people in. I drive the speed limit. I'm the most courteous driver in Santa Barbara. I know that can't be true for me. But see, it's not about actions. It's not about what you do. It is, though, about what you judge. So even though you may not be doing that anymore, you still may not have forgiven yourself for that. Because what we notice is that the judgments that we have of other people must come from something that's resident within us. We cannot project something that we don't own. I can't put something out on you unless I have it. And of course, Miracle says that projection equals perception, which means that if I put something out there, then I see it. And if I see it, then it's telling me where the work is. Now, there's another little tricky part of this, and this is where we could end up being here for a long, long, long time. And that is this. And that is that the core principle would go back to that you can never be separate from this love, right? So if someone cuts me off and I get angry with them, obviously what's gone away is my peace, right? But the truth says you can never be separate from God. You can never be separate from love. You can never be separate from joy. You can never be separate from the peace that passes human understanding. You can't be. That's absolutely not possible. It's like you can't be separate from, the air in this room. This is who you are. This is already the energy of your being is this peace. So if that can't be true, and I judge somebody because I think they have taken away my peace, then what I forgive them for is not for what they did, but for judging them for what they didn't do. They didn't take away my peace. They didn't take away my love. That's not a possibility. But to the extent that I believe that they have done that, it avoids me having to deal with where the problem really is, which is believing that I'm separate from God, believing that I'm separate from this love, which is absolutely not possible, but that is the cause of my suffering, is believing that I am separate from this peace. And it's very convenient for the mind to just say, you're it. You did it. Because when I do that, then I don't have to really deal with this most essential problem, where the problem is. Now we don't say this to make ourselves feel guilty, because that would be compounding, oh great, all right. Before, I thought you were to blame. Now, I know that I'm to blame. Isn't this evolution wonderful? No, it's not that. But that is a preliminary step before we can get to the promised land of freedom and peace. So the first step in this process is to recognize if we're bothered by what somebody else has done, is to recognize that what we're judging in them is something that we are judging in ourselves. And that may require a little bit of investigation, but again, you may say, oh no, I don't do that anymore. But just remember that maybe you haven't completely let yourself off the hook. I know a lot of people, my secretary in the previous work that I had, office manager, she was amazing, and whenever she saw an obese person, she was racked with judgment. She would say the nastiest things, and I mean, not to them, but she had a lot of judgment around it. And I asked her, I said, why do you feel that way? And she said, well, I used to be 250 pounds. But she lost it all. She was like 120 pounds. But she had judgment of herself for whatever reason, and that she would project that out. So it's important for us to recognize that the work around guilt is something that is just a light unto what we haven't completely let go of. So anyway, the first step, we got that. Whatever I'm judging in someone else is something that I'm judging in myself. Oh, good news, great. No, it's not good news yet, right? So now we have this. Okay, that's possibly true. But the second step is to forgive ourselves for believing that we are guilty. See, we make progress when we move it from out here to here, because this is where the problem is, because I'm the one that's not experiencing the love of God, right? I don't know anything about what this person is experiencing, but I do know what I'm experiencing, and I'm not experiencing peace or not experiencing love. So there it is. Now, I think it's because of something that I did. But that, again, is just as much of an error as it is to think that someone else did something that could separate you from the peace of God. I can't separate myself from the peace of God in truth, although I can certainly do it in my mind. I can believe that somehow, some way, I'm guilty and I'm not deserving of this unconditional love. But again, it's an error. This is what the Course says. It's an error. You can't be separate from this love. So neither is it the cause of someone else, what they've done, nor is it you. And when you recognize those two things and you become willing to have that lifted from you, that is the third step of the forgiveness process. When I finally get it, it's not what you did, and I forgive you for making you responsible for feeling that you've taken away the peace of God, which is not possible. When I forgive myself for believing that there's anything in me that could separate me from the love of God, which is unconditional, doesn't matter whatever I've done, that love is there. It's still the essence of my being. It's very much like the example of if a boat was going through the ocean and you would see the wake behind the boat, and where the waves, there would be two sets of waves. And you would say, oh, there's separation in the ocean. But we know there's no separation, that those waves just really completely close together at all time. It's a contiguous, continuous energy that this love is. Nothing can separate us from it. So that's what we do in terms of our own experience. So we look to ourselves, and we recognize there's an error there, and then we ask the Spirit, whatever you call that Spirit, whatever your higher power is, to have that lifted up. And when you're completely willing, it does happen. It will happen. It's not because someone will suddenly become something else. It's not because you will do something different. It's because you finally are willing to release this shame and this guilt that will allow you to bring back into your experience the love that is always and shall always be present. That is the freedom. That is the path to freedom. And so in a sense, other people become, I think this was Marianne Williamson who said this, they either become our saviors or they become our crucifiers, in a sense, that they can save us if we recognize that they show us what's missing in our own experience. And then that allows us to go to work on where the real problem is. And if we see them as the problem, then they're going to take us down. We're going to let them take us down, because I have no control over other people. Do you have any control over people in your life? Is that working for you at all? No matter how good of a salesperson you are? Can you really convince people to be, and even if you do, does it really feel like authentic behavior that they're giving you back? Really, no, it doesn't work. So we have to find a way to do this work internally. So I think I made my point. It's time to go home. Let's see if I have something inspirational to read to you. That'd be nice. Okay. I had some lovely cards, and I think they have fallen out of my book. Oh, here they are. Okay. This is from A Course in Miracles, from the text. It says, "Teach no one that he is what you would not want to be. Your brother is the mirror in which you see the image of yourself, as long as perception lasts." And perception is me seeing the problem. And perception will last until the sonship knows itself as whole. Until we get that we are already whole, we'll continue to project. You made perception, and it must last as long as you want it. When a brother acts insanely, he is offering you an opportunity to bless him. Really? His need is yours. You need the blessing you can offer him. There's no way for you to have it except by giving it. This is the law of God, and it has no exceptions. Do we understand that? If someone's acting crazy, he's offering you an opportunity to bless him. Because what he's doing, especially when you have a visceral reaction to it in a negative way, that this person then is revealing to you that you somehow believe that you're separate from the peace of God. It wouldn't bother you, right? You don't need people who, don't push your buttons. They're not going to bring you home. It's the people that push your buttons that are going to bring you home, because they're going to show you where you're separate from the love of God, and that can't be possible. So we thank the people that push our buttons, in a sense, because they show us dynamics that are invisible to our own awareness inside of ourselves. Other people reveal the dynamics of what's going on with us in a way that we can see. And if we can see it, then we can work with it. And if we can work with it, then we are not stuck in this jail. That's the way to freedom. Jesus actually said it. I did bring my Bible for a reason. I'm trying to remember what it is. Here it is now. So this is Jesus' words. Of course, he always spoke in all these wonderful metaphors and parables. So he says, when you are offering your gift at the altar, and if you remember that your brother or your sister has something against you, you got an issue with them, leave your gift there before the altar and go first to be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. It sounds like a very curmudgeon-y Jesus, doesn't it? Like he's really ticked off. What all of he's talking about there is this accuser that he's talking about is who? It's us. He's talking about the judge, the guilt that we carry inside of ourselves. That unless we're reconciled with that, unless we stop making someone else responsible for, blocking the peace of God, until we get in touch with who's really doing the blocking, which is the mind, this erroneous thinking that we have. Until we get in touch with that, we will go all the way into prison. We'll be bound up in a helpless situation. So be reconciled with your brother means to see him for what he has not, forgive him for what he has not done, which is separate you from God. Forgive yourself for the guilt that you feel, because it also cannot keep you from the peace of God. And then make yourself available for that higher power to have that guilt lifted from you, so that you can be back into a state of love, which is your reality anyway, which is which is really, we've never left heaven, we've never left the garden, however you want to express that notion. But that's what A Course in Miracles really teaches, is that we're at home in God, believing that we are in exile. And it's an erroneous belief. It cannot be. Who and what we really are is spiritual. And we can run all around here and pretend that we're just human beings, and seek and not find until, we collapse in a heap of exhaustion. And we can blame other people, like we've all done, for the fact that we're not happy and we're not experiencing love. Until the day comes, and maybe today's the day, when I say, you know what? I'm tired of seeking but not finding. I want to have this experience. And I need to it's like the man looking for his keys. I gotta not just look where it's easy to look, I've got to look where the answer is. And the answer is, it's within me. God placed that love inside of me. And if I can have a relationship with that part of me where I can trust that it will be shown to me, it will be revealed to me, if I'm just willing to let go of everything that's not true. Can you just hold in question all those notions of what you thought were so? Just hold them in question, because if they're not tied down in truth, they'll go. You'll see through them. They'll be released. And what's under that, what's always been under that, is the love of God. Amen? Amen.